The Serps feel the ripple too, and their reaction is different from everyone else's. They don't see the brick disruption as a mistake, they see it as a message. And they know messages in Chicago don't come cheap. If someone is bold enough to tamper with the product, that someone might be bold enough to challenge their position as well. The Serps begin tightening their own ranks, making sure no one in their circle has been compromised. They start looking at Tommy with a fresh set of questions that could turn into problems if they don't like the answers they find. Their silence becomes a threat all by itself. Meanwhile, smaller street crews start acting like sharks sensing blood. When the brick flow falters, they assume bigger chaos is coming. And chaos always creates openings for ambition, openings for betrayal, openings for crews who want to rise without being invited. A few hustlers begin testing Tommy's territory in small, subtle ways. Maybe they shift a little product on streets they shouldn't. Maybe they talk to people they're supposed to avoid. Maybe they just wait, hoping Tommy slips so they can move in and claim something that never belonged to them. Episode 5 captures that tension perfectly. Nobody is saying it out loud, but everyone is preparing for a change in power. Even law enforcement feels the shift. When product stops moving the way it usually does, it creates patterns, and patterns trigger curiosity. Detectives who were focused elsewhere start noticing inconsistencies, unusual gaps, and street chatter that doesn't fit the normal flow. The brick disruption becomes a clue that something big is happening behind the scenes. And when the police sense a shift, they tighten surveillance, widen their focus, and start putting pieces together that Tommy wished had stayed separate. But the most powerful ripple effect is the one happening inside the people closest to Tommy. Episode 5 exposes cracks in loyalty. Not big enough to break yet, but big enough to change the air. Some people who claim to be with him begin feeling the pressure. They know Tommy expects strength, not hesitation, and hesitation becomes dangerous when the streets get unpredictable. Fear starts growing in places it didn't exist before, and fear makes people unpredictable. It makes them reconsider alliances. It makes them choose self-preservation over loyalty. And Tommy can sense it. As the ripple spreads, Chicago becomes a city waiting for someone to make the next move. Every crew is tense. Every connection is fragile. Every plan is under pressure. And the person who caused the brick twist is watching all of this unfold, knowing exactly what they set in motion. Episode 5 turns the brick storyline into the spark that lights the entire season, pushing every character into a position where they must pick a side even if they're not ready. What makes episode 5 stand out isn't just the shift in the brick flow, it's the way certain characters move when the pressure hits. The brick twist becomes the spark, but the characters become the fire. Every major player reacts to the disruption in their own way, revealing flaws, ambitions, secrets, and instincts that have been hiding under the surface all season. These personal moments don't just add drama, they reshape the entire direction of the storyline, because each reaction exposes a new threat or reveals a new advantage. And it's these reactions that turn the brick storyline from a problem into a full-blown powder keg. The first character who truly stands out is Tommy himself. Episode 5 shows him shifting his energy from aggressive expansion to cold calculation. He becomes quieter, sharper, and more focused. You can almost see him replaying the entire operation in his head, looking for the moment where someone stepped out of line. But the most telling detail isn't his anger, it's the way he holds it back. Tommy usually reacts with force, but here, he's holding it inside like a blade he hasn't swung yet. That controlled anger makes him more dangerous than ever. And the people around him can feel it without him saying a word. Then there's Jennard, who reacts with panic covered by pride. He acts tougher than usual, louder than usual, because deep down he knows this twist might end up exposing his own weaknesses. His crew has been shaky for a while, and this disruption forces him to confront a reality he doesn't want to admit. His power isn't as strong as he pretends. Episode 5 shows him making rash choices, pushing his people too hard, and trying to prove he's still relevant. But that desperation becomes obvious And in the streets, desperation is the same as blood in the water. Diamond, on the other hand, moves with a quiet intelligence. He sees the brick twist not just as a threat, but as a test of loyalty, trust, and influence. Diamond has always been the more stable mind in the force of chaos around him, and episode 5 highlights that stability. Instead of jumping into conflict, he hangs back, watches, and measures everyone's reactions like he's gathering evidence. His small, silent moments, those thinking pauses, those careful questions show that he's preparing for something larger. He knows the game is shifting, and he's planning a way to stay ahead of it without burning bridges too soon. We also get subtle but important reactions from characters on the edges of the main conflict. People who don't control the bricks, but rely on them. People whose loyalty is tied to safety, not honor. Some of these characters start showing cracks. A few grow nervous, their eyes shifting more than their words. A few start asking questions that reveal they're considering backup plans. Episode 5 uses these small moments to show how fear moves through a crew like smoke. It creeps, spreads, and settles in places you don't expect. One character, in particular, stands out because they shift quietly into a position of influence. They don't raise their voice. They don't make threats. But their calmness hints that they might know more about the twist than they should. Maybe they've been talking to the wrong people. Maybe they've been planning something long before this episode. Their reaction is too collected, too prepared. And Tommy notices. The audience notices. And suddenly, this person becomes one of the most suspicious players in the entire storyline. The Serps also have a powerful character moment through their leader, cold, observant, and unreadable. He doesn't lash out. He doesn't accuse. He simply watches, gathering knowledge the way a predator studies the movement of prey. His calm demeanor is almost scarier than anger because it suggests he's waiting for confirmation, waiting to see if Tommy has lost control, waiting to see whether this twist benefits or threatens his own power. That patience makes him dangerous because people who don't rush into anger are the same people who strike with precision when the time is right. Even the people who have no direct control over the bricks start showing sides of themselves that make the situation more volatile. Some become brave because they think Tommy is slipping. Others become cautious because they sense something bigger happening. Episode 5 turns these small character shifts into signals that the city is preparing for a change whether Tommy likes it or not. These character moments are what make the brick twist so explosive. They turn a simple disruption into a complex web of personal motives. They reveal who's scared, who's ambitious, who's hiding something, and who's ready to turn against Tommy if the opportunity appears. The bricks may be the product, but the characters are the real game. And episode 5 shows that the game has only just begun. Episode 5 doesn't just push the storyline forward, it quietly plants seeds that tell us the future is about to get even darker. These clues aren't loud or obvious. They're hidden in small conversations, strange silences, suspicious glances, and moments that feel harmless until you look deeper. The brick twist becomes the center of a much bigger storm, and episode 5 gives us enough hints to see that the real danger hasn't even started yet. Every clue feels like a warning, a signal that someone is moving with purpose, and that the streets of Chicago are preparing for a shift that nobody will see coming until it hits them in the face. One of the strongest pieces of foreshadowing comes from Tommy himself. Not through his words, but through his silence. He looks at people differently in this episode with that sharp, focused stare that means he's putting pieces together. It's the kind of look he had back when someone was lying to him in New York, right before he exposed the truth. That expression tells us he already senses the betrayal brewing in the shadows. It also hints that the person behind the brick twist isn't a random enemy, it's someone standing closer than we expect. Someone with access. Someone who knows Tommy's system well enough to exploit it. Tommy's intuition is dialing up, and that shift alone tells us a confrontation is coming soon. Another hidden clue lies in the sudden change in street behavior. Chicago feels jittery in episode 5, to quiet in some places, to tense in others. Crews who normally move loud become strangely reserved, as if they're waiting for instructions from someone they're too scared to name. The balance in the streets shifts in a way that doesn't match the natural flow of business. It feels controlled, as if an unseen hand is guiding the movements. This foreshadowing suggests that a new player or a hidden one has already begun influencing the streets from a distance. Someone with patience, someone with strategy, someone who doesn't need attention to gain power. We also get visual clues through small exchanges. A conversation that ends too quickly. A handshake that feels forced. A character who avoids eye contact at the exact moment they should be confident. Episode 5 uses these. Everything changes the moment that one brick goes missing, because in this world, a single brick isn't just product. It's power. And episode 5 proves that the entire city can shift overnight because of one unexpected move. This isn't just a problem for Tommy. This is the kind of twist that flips alliances, exposes weak links, and forces everyone to pick a side faster than they planned. Episode 5 doesn't just move the brick storyline forward. It blows it wide open. Before episode 5 hits, the brick storyline is already hanging by a thread. Chicago is tense. Every crew is watching the other too closely, and the drug flow is nowhere near as stable as Tommy wants it to be. He's been trying to keep the supply moving fast enough to satisfy the people above him while still keeping the streets quiet enough to avoid heat. But the balance has been slipping slowly, one mistake at a time. Everyone involved knows the bricks aren't just business, they're leverage. The kind of leverage that decides who runs territory, who keeps loyalty, and who gets pushed out of the game. Tommy came into Chicago ready to build an empire, but the deeper he gets, the more he sees how messy the power structure really is. Every crew wants a piece. Every crew thinks they deserve more. And every crew believes they can outsmart him if they play their cards right. Before episode 5, Tommy's whole operation sits on a thin line between control and complete collapse. He's been expanding fast, maybe too fast for some people's comfort, and that speed is starting to create cracks. Jennard's people are watching him. The Serbs are keeping count. And the police. They're starting to notice patterns, even when Tommy thinks he's being careful. Tommy also knows that one wrong move with the bricks can cost him more than profit. It can cost him trust he worked hard to build with crews that don't trust easily in the first place. The type of trust that disappears the moment a shipment goes missing, a price changes, or a street soldier starts talking too much. And in the world of power, once trust breaks, everything else falls apart right behind it. The brick flow was never as secure as Tommy wanted it to look. The moment he stepped into Chicago, he became the center of a game already in motion. He's dealing with people who've lived this life long before he got there, people who want to remind him that he's still the outsider trying to run things like he's back in New York. They respect his moves, sure. They fear his temper. But they don't like the idea of him controlling the bricks, and they never will. That's why episode 5 hits the way it does. Because the storyline doesn't change because Tommy makes a mistake. It changes because somebody else sees an opening. Someone sees the chance to twist the balance, and they take it without hesitation. Before episode 5, the brick operation was tense but stable. After episode 5, it becomes the reason every major character is suddenly forced to take a step back and rethink their next move. Tommy has been trying to keep everything smooth. But Chicago isn't built for smooth. It's built for pressure, suspicion, and silent battles happening behind closed doors. The bricks are more than product, they're the pulse of the city. And when that pulse changes rhythm, every crew feels it instantly. That's exactly where episode 5 takes the storyline, into a place where nothing is certain anymore, and Tommy must decide whether to tighten his grip or start preparing for war. Tommy doesn't panic when the brick situation changes, he calculates. That's the part that separates him from every other player in Chicago. While most people react fast and loud, Tommy reacts sharp and focused. Episode 5 shows a side of him that's even more dangerous than usual, because he stops thinking like a street boss and starts thinking like a man who knows a bigger war is coming. The twist forces him into a position where every move matters. Every conversation becomes a clue. Every silence becomes a warning. And every lie becomes a question mark. Instead of diving straight into violence, Tommy steps back and rewatches the whole game in his head. He knows someone deliberately disrupted the brick flow, and he knows they want him off balance. But Tommy also understands something most people forget. The person who moves first isn't always the one in control. The person who moves smartest is. So he begins to rebuild his strategy one piece at a time, studying the cracks in his empire and the pressure points in every crew tied to his operation. His first shift is simple but powerful. He stops trusting the surface. Tommy begins examining every deal, every handshake, every moment where someone might have played him without him noticing. He looks at the people closest to the bricks, the transporters, the distributors, the money handlers, and he doesn't just ask what they did. He asks who they fear, because fear reveals loyalty faster than anything. If someone suddenly seems nervous, distant, or overly defensive, Tommy picks up on it instantly. And episode 5 shows him giving that cold, silent look that tells us he's already calculating what needs to be done. Tommy also changes how he speaks to people. His tone turns heavier, his questions more direct. He forces people to face him head-on because he knows people lie differently when they're confronted by someone who already knows the truth. He puts pressure on the right people, watches how they react, and uses those reactions to map out who might be connected to the twist. Tommy has always been good at reading the streets, but in this episode, he reads the people just as sharply. The next part of his shift is even more interesting. He adjusts his alliances, not by cutting people off, but by controlling the flow of information. Tommy stops telling everyone everything. He becomes selective about what he shares and who he shares it with. This creates tension, because people who once felt comfortable with him suddenly feel distance. And in Chicago, distance usually means danger. But that's intentional. Tommy wants to see who starts scrambling, who starts whispering, and who starts making moves they shouldn't. He uses silence as bait. And some people fall right into the trap. What makes this strategy so smart is that Tommy doesn't show any sign of weakness. He doesn't let the twist make him look shaken. He moves with the same confidence he always does, even though he's rebuilding his entire playbook behind the scenes. This sends mixed signals to every crew. They can't tell if Tommy is unaware of the threat or aware and waiting to strike. And that uncertainty keeps them in line for now. Another part of Tommy's shift involves tightening the streets. He starts checking the flow the way a mechanic checks an engine flow, careful and exact. He looks for inconsistencies in the numbers, small delays in movement, sudden changes in behavior that don't make sense unless someone is working against him. Episode 5 makes it clear that Tommy is watching everything with a sharper eye. He knows one brick doesn't disappear alone. It disappears with a network. And networks always leave traces. But the real highlight of Tommy's shift happens when he starts thinking about the bigger players. The ones who move quietly, the ones who don't show their hand until the table is already stacked in their favor. Tommy begins to suspect this twist isn't about product, it's about control. Someone is signaling that they want a seat at the top, and they're willing to shake up the bricks to get Tommy's attention. And that realization changes him. Tommy becomes more guarded, more strategic, and more dangerous. By the end of episode 5, it's clear that Tommy isn't reacting to the twist anymore. He's planning his counterattack. He isn't just trying to stabilize the situation. He's preparing to flip it. The brick twist pushed him into a corner, but Tommy doesn't stay in corners. He breaks out, and when he does, he brings the kind of storm that Chicago never forgets. When the brick twist hits, it doesn't just shake Tommy, it sends a wave through every corner of Chicago, reaching people who weren't even supposed to be involved. Episode 5 makes it clear that the brick storyline is no longer something Tommy controls alone. The moment the balance shifts, every crew starts reacting in ways that expose what they truly want, what they fear, and who they might betray next. The ripple effect becomes bigger than the bricks themselves because it reveals Chicago's real truth. Everybody is hungry, and everybody is watching. The first wave hits Jennard's side. His crew has been unstable for a long time, but this twist gives them a reason to question everything again. They start whispering among themselves, wondering if Tommy's operation is beginning to crack. They know a weak plug is bad business, and hesitation spreads fast. Some of Jennard's people start thinking about switching lanes, maybe getting closer to whoever caused this shift in the first place. It's not loyalty they're thinking about, it's survival. They're trying to figure out who will offer the safest future, and right now. Uncertainty is pushing them to make reckless decisions. Then there's Diamond, who sees the twist from a completely different angle. He doesn't panic not because he trusts Tommy completely, but because he understands that chaos often reveals opportunity. Diamond starts analyzing which crews will fold under pressure, which ones will get greedy, and which ones will try to move behind Tommy's back. He's always been the more strategic mind of CBI, and this twist gives him the chance to study the board more carefully. He becomes more alert, more observant, quietly preparing for whatever shift comes next. His calmness is almost unsettling because it signals that he's preparing for a bigger move,